And so I'd like to make just bring up a quote from the Bible, just a quick verse. I'll probably put more in the video. Yeah, I'll put some more in if I feel like they should be they're relevant. But this one, 1 Peter 1, chapter 1, verse 7, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honour and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. So tried with fire, it's a difficult thing, a difficult process following God. As the other verse says, you know, God has made you separate to come out from among non-believers and to suffer hatred, persecution, passive aggressiveness. I mean, this is what the devil's people are like. They're usually cowards, but they'll go at you in a sneaky way. And honestly, if there's people like that in your life, I would cut them out. And if it's at work, just don't talk to them. You know, don't talk to them. But anyway, I'm straying off the subject. So yeah, I mean, I was impressed how Jada put across her Christian faith. Part of the problem is that in today's world, God is not cool, and the reason largely is because the official Christian denominations such as Protestants or Catholics, both are quite left-wing nowadays. I think Catholics tend to be a little bit more conservative, minus the Pope at the moment. If you go to a Catholic church, you get a more traditional sermon on the whole. But yeah, they just drive people away because it's like happy clappy hippies, you know, and they are weird. There's some really weird people when you go to these mainstream churches and you think, fucking hell, I'm not like one of these gnomes, right? So yeah, that's true. But why do you think that is? Because the devil's clever, so he recruits his own to go and do things like that to make Christianity look bad. And that's why people leave church, because they just preach rubbish. They don't actually preach. They don't use verses in context. They just preach about love and peace, and you know, anyone can figure that out in 5 minutes on their own. That God is love and peaceful, you know. Of course He is, but He's not. He doesn't just stand by when people are being attacked. You've got to go and defend yourself. That's all it is. We're defending ourselves from anti-white globalism. And it is anti-white. It's very anti-white. Now, the best advice I have, if you want to pursue Christian faith, is to get a King James Bible, not a new King James, the old King James. There are better Bibles out there, I would say, but King James is probably the easiest to read and understand. Now, sure, they've been translated, but the newer versions, the meaning goes in a lot of lines there, and that's not right. The meaning is very important, and I think you're better off with the King James. So yeah, I think in my case, as I said, I had a mental breakdown. I couldn't work, couldn't go to college, and this was come from being picked on. Now, that doesn't make me a victim today. You know, quite the opposite. I'm a strong bloke physically and mentally nowadays. But when I was a kid, I was very naive and I was good-natured, and you know, people took advantage of that. So let's just read another one on that subject. The trial by fire passage I like, but this one's probably a bit more to the point. Hebrews 12:6. For the Lord disciplines the one he loves, and he chastises everyone he receives as a son. Endure suffering as discipline. God is treating you as sons, for what son is not disciplined by his father? For the Lord disciplines the ones he loves, and he chastises every son he receives. Endure suffering as discipline. God is treating you as sons, for what son is not disciplined by his father? If you do not experience discipline like everyone else, then you are illegitimate children and not true sons. Furthermore, we have all had earthly fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them. Should we not much more submit to the Father of our spirits and life? Yeah, so God is all-powerful, and, his ways are mysterious. But basically, if you fall in life and you feel like, things aren't going so well, you should probably be happy because, the shallow and stupid people of this world will never be disciplined because they've got nothing to do with God and God wants nothing to do with them. I'm not saying I'm pointing a finger at anyone in particular, because it is true that if you turn to God, by the laws, God's law, He will teach you if you're genuine. So even the worst person or the most sort of idiotic type person could be a child of God. I don't want people to think, oh, I'm not good enough, because, God isn't a respecter of persons. That's another quote from the Bible, direct. He's a respecter of his laws. The law applies to everyone the same. You can't, just be... You might have a favourite son, for instance, but, if the son misbehaves, you can't show him preference. But he can, use the rod. This is the problem with all the kids these days. Their heads are lodged so far up their own arses, and it's because they've never been disciplined. I used to get smacked, but as I said, I was picked on really badly, physical, mental, and my parents smacking me was nothing. My parents, I love it, were loving people, and they still are. And I don't look back at that thinking, oh, they walloped my backside when I was being naughty. I don't feel any animosity at all. In my personal view, I think we are in the end times, although to say a date is obviously, you can't, because only God knows the day. This is what it says in Revelations. But you can measure the climate. You can measure it will be a time of war and rumour of war, and most of all the apostasy, which is the worldwide falling away from Christ. And I do think that probably is the era we're in. But if we were to turn earnestly to God as a nation, as a people, and I mean majority white Christians that live in Europe, right? If we were to return, He could save us. He could beat our enemies in a day, in 1 day, in 1 hour. The problem is that no one will turn. Everyone's arrogant and believes their own nonsense. And then they go to a liberal church and they've fed even more nonsense, and then they drop religion altogether. Well, as I said, just read the Bible and look online. There's various preachers online